Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the IMAA's Insights and Innovation series for this very rainy and cold afternoon. Today, we have our good friends at Amobee talking to us today about the future of television. The future is here. This is encompassing everything from BVOD, CTV to linear. They're going to be looking at industry trends, where the future's going. What is the future of BVOD, CTV? What does it mean for indies, more importantly, and things that indies can impact now to kind of, make their buyers a little bit better. I'm going to introduce you to the amazing Lenten Reddy, who is ready to pack his bags and leave the house if it floods too much. Same with the yarn. And also Andrew and Tish, the rest of the team from Amobee. So I'll hand it to you guys. Over to you.
Oh, hey everyone. So I don't know if you remember my face from the last webinar, but yeah, my name's Lenten or Lenny, and I work with the team at Amobee. So Andrew and Trish, you can see in your screens just there. So today we are going to talk to you about the future of TV. This is something that we've been quite active in the last 2 years. I've spent a ton of investment and effort into. So yeah, hopefully the next couple of slides can give you some kind of insight into what's currently happening. And then, yeah, what really opportunities is there for indies in this space at the moment? Grab all your questions. I think Sam will do a little question time at the end, and then you guys can flick anything to us during the week if you have to. Cool. So kicking off, I just went through the agenda really briefly, but essentially, yeah, we're just going to go through a couple of the trends, some opportunities, what Amobee's been doing in the space, and really where we've invested a lot of our time into. And then, yeah, we'll just leave you with some key takeaways at the end. Cool. So, state of the industry. Well, so it's no surprise, I guess, to us that catch-up on-demand services are increasing in viewership. We're seeing roughly about 34% year-on-year in terms of total consumption. Now, broadcasters are capturing a ton of this attention, and it's more public attention than ever. And we're seeing this also with the attention side. So although broadcasters are putting a ton of content, also capturing about 2.6 more of that attention from their other channels. And then lastly, something that we've seen huge over the last 12 months are major events. So major events are increasingly being watched in on-demand environments. And this is really good, right? Because it gives the general public another way of watching that particular content. And what we're seeing is, and a perfect example actually, is the Channel 7 Winter Olympics coverage. They had roughly about 12 channels, I think, capturing about 10 or so different sports. That in itself really showed that the broadcaster could hold that attention while offering those multiple sports. And I think that for them was really key to capturing that audience during that time. So again, no surprise, video is continuously driving year-on-year growth. We're seeing it about 48% up from last year or the year previous. Now, this comes with its own challenges, obviously. We're seeing a huge bunch of inflation and supply constraints. So this is almost causing a ton of planners to rethink their budgets just due to what supplies in market at the moment. So we are seeing that increase in demand as well. Fragmentation, so as users are shifting between linear and digital formats, that means there's a ton more fragmentation in market, right? So how are we actually going to capture this and identify those users? And then lastly, it's reporting. So, we're obviously aiming to bring these channels as close as ever. But what does it actually mean for the end of campaign or end of brand measurement? So this is a really key thing we're going to discuss today. So again, about 7.5 million Australians are watching BVOD at the moment. And looking across the big broadcasters, you can see that they're pulling in a ton of content at the moment. And they're seeing roughly about a 40% growth from that previous slide. Now, generally, we think about looking at the day-to-day, we think about this just as a phase. People were at home for the last year and a half, and therefore they were capturing a ton more audience in CTV. Now, it wasn't just the general public, sitting at home catching up on their emails while having The Bachelor in the background. I believe this is showing us the really true high impact of these channels, right? And it's showing that BVOD is now more accessible and measurable than ever. Cool. Next slide. Cool. So what does this actually mean for brands? So brands coming into this space really want to know, how do they own that user's particular attention, and how do they create a really high share of voice environment. So for a long time, obviously, the major channel that converted reach was TV or linear TV, and that generally being the one show after the other format. BVOD, on the other hand, is really giving the user back the control, right? So whether they're sitting on public transport, getting into work, or they're sitting on the couch while their two-year-old watches Bluey, the type of way we're consuming that content is changing. Cool. So we talk about, I guess, the streaming wars quite a bit, but that doesn't really change the way we engage with users or hold their attention. With premium video or BVOD, we believe that you can almost achieve that brand association that you did with linear, or almost much more targeted. And this is in ways of using just really standard capabilities that are available to all of us, and using things like time targeting to be able to put that ad in front of a user at a specific time. This in turn is obviously creating a very high attention environment for us, and it also makes it a ton easier for us to actually target and activate across. Excuse me. Leading video on demand apps in Australia. So we can see that Netflix is obviously winning this by a mile, and that's no surprise to any of us, right? The interesting thing is 9Now is second, not any of the major paid streaming apps. That really shows that people still want to engage with that local news. They want that local Australian type content. However, they want it on whenever they want to actually engage. And a really good example of that is, oh, sorry, I think I just skipped a slide there. A really good example is Foxtel's group apps. And looking at their consumption over 2020, it increased by around 40%. And this is really showing that it's not just their subscribers who are getting across their content now. It's really those users that have maybe seen those shows and want to consume it on a more ad hoc basis. And they've been able to put in around another 1.1 million users across that time. Another interesting stat is the age breakdown of users watching BVOD and linear. And one of the most interesting ones that I thought was, if you look at that age demo on the right-hand side from 55 plus, that makes up about 26% of the overall BVOD viewership. Now, forgive me if I'm thinking wrong here, however, most of the time, if I was thinking about engaging with those older type Australians, I would think about linear. And this is a really interesting way to look at that data and to see those users that we might have been missed out on. Cool. Next slide. So, excuse me. What does this actually mean for indies? Well, we know that the way linear TV is watched is generally, again, that format where it's one after the other. BVOD being able to consume at any point of the day means that it's almost often consumed spontaneously, and this means that there's a huge part of that audience that we might not be continuing that brand conversation with. So as they step into a BVOD environment, they almost lose focus on that. So this is really key for us to identify users for targeting and measurement, and make it much easier in BVOD environments rather than representing that user base in linear as well. And this is a really good way for us to understand the type of content users are actually engaging with, and be able to serve our ad within that brand association. Cool. So using TV in an increasingly connected world. So I guess using the old legacy way of planning, there'd generally be the tasks that we would go after, and that would generally mean that we're booking it, we're activating on a panel basis. Now, there's obviously a huge gap in that. There's a huge gap in that, and would create a ton of wastage. What we kind of do, and I guess where we really think the efficiencies in booking and planning BVOD is being able to take linear out of that silo and being able to understand those missed environments or missed opportunities for users that are actually consuming that type of content. And this makes that users that we would have missed previously super valuable. Now, Also, another interesting way to look at it is, you know, if in a perfect world, if we were to plan BVOD, we'd essentially single out a target audience and look at it from that way, and then look at exactly that split between our digital and linear environments. Cool. So a couple of ways we can actually do this. There's a couple of different TV data partnerships in market right now. On the left-hand side, you see a third-party ACR, which is kind of like similar to what we know as Samba in this market. And that gives us a couple of interesting things, right? Given that it's ACR or automated content recognition, we're able to see what content and what's been viewed on that particular CTV, whether that be from a linear format or digital. ACR gives us, the Samba ACR gives us around 250,000 panel sets. It allows us to see household level data. So, you know, roughly how many users were in front of that TV when the ad or content played. We can look at exposed and unexposed. So whether that user was exposed to your linear campaign or whether they just weren't purely because of reach. We can see national, regional, and local reporting. So again, being able to look at that from in a linear lens. So when we go onto the right and we look at Samsung, this is just that one step further, right? As well as all those capabilities, it also gives us an increase of 1.8 million TV sets. So in terms of that panel base now that we're looking at exposure, it's grown tremendously. That again gives us things like our household and demo and co-viewing as well. Moving over and set-top box. So set-top box, think about this, sits above the TV. So anything happening below that is essentially able to be recognized. And this is around 2 million mobile and CT devices included in this map, which is super interesting to understand what type of device that user was actually using and where they were. We're able to see user and demo level data. So being able to then not just understand who or identify who was exposed to the ad, but also then using that downstream for retargeting. So being able to isolate a user and go and match them with a specific ad. This also allows us to do some really interesting stuff, which I'll show you in a second, in terms of real-time planning, buying, and optimization while your campaign's actually running. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, you know, the true and trusted method that all our leading teams have been using is OSTEM. And this is really the gold standard measurement for linear and convergence, right? It gives us access to about 20,000 households and up to 14 million devices. So quite a good spread in terms of users there. So all of that said, what does Amobee actually bring to the table? And I guess where can we actually help indies in their converged plans? Our AI, and this is, I guess, the culmination of the 2 years of investment, is really to bring it as close as possible to the way digital buyers buy, but to the way linear TV buyers think. And this is more culminating into 3 different pillars, right? And first is to think about our TV data. We understand that, you know, it is still quite solid, but with our converged map, we believe that we can bring this closer to the digital ID and to enable us to do that downstream retargeting. The second pillar is connecting to digital ID. So being able to see that exposed viewer now gives us some really interesting downstream impacts, right? We're able to then find that user in other environments and also target them with other formats. So whether that be rich media, display, or online video, our platform allows us to then use that digital identity to be able to downstream target. And then lastly, all well and good having the data and having the technology to do it, but we believe that we really automate this process, right? Amobee cuts down around 80% of the processes and actions required to actually launch a campaign through BVOD. So using that with the linear informed plans, we find that it gives you some really strategic and performance and high-performance campaigns. So in terms of actual usable solutions, the first one is our planner. So this is something that we've built out with the likes of VOZ, Samsung, and our set-top box data to be able to essentially understand what your reach would look like but just using linear and BVOD. And this is a really key way to understand what your total reach would look like if you are going after mum, or if we are targeting mums and dads. What is my reach on linear versus BVOD, and where do I need to simply be allocating that spend? And this planner and forecasting tool is a really interesting way for us to be able to break that out. So once we've planned, we're essentially going to move on to activation, right? And activation for us means that we can use all those different granular information sets that we had in the planning phase and really pull that across to the targeting. Again, Samsung here powers our ACR targeting methodology. And again, using that 1.8 million TV sets to essentially build a panel of your exposed users. Set-top box will add another layer of granularity there. So think about this as looking at, what was actually being consumed on that particular TV, whether that was Netflix, what type of shows. Are they a high news watcher? Do they generally consume a lot of sporting content? And set-top box data will be able to give us that view. And that brings in really the full funnel targeting, right? So with that said, we're able to then see your linear exposure, bring that into your digital environments, and then downstream retarget. And we think that set-top box data really does allow us to do that full funnel targeting solution. Cool. So what does this actually mean for targeting? Well, on the left-hand side, we have our research and analytics. Then we use that to obviously make some linear informed CTV audiences to target. And then everything downstream from that is really the capability and where the efficiency really lies, right? So be able to tie that linear exposed user all the way downstream to be able, and then match that with your first party activation. That's really the holy grail of what we're trying to do. And we think that we're very close right now. And then lastly, we've planned, we've activated, and we've measured. We've planned and activated. How do we actually measure? And the True Reach Plus reporting that Amobee's built out with Samsung really allows us to then understand who was actually exposed to each one of those ads, and what was that true converged audience, so that deduplicated number that people were exposed. So again, this is about 1.8 million TV sets to really understand and identify these users. So in terms of a panel size, it does take into account quite a huge amount of the population. The way it does this as well, and I guess just for information on ACR, it essentially just matches snippets of the reference libraries with what's actually happening on the TV at that time. So it's a really accurate way of being able to manage that cross exposure between those channels. And yeah, we're able to see around 6.9 million of households. So in terms of actual viewership in front of the TV, this is a really interesting way for us to look at it. So we're not looking at it at user perspective anymore, and really looking at that household level. And we're almost at the end, and we've almost burned through this. So we've been really quick. This is quite a short deck, but yeah, a couple of key takeaways. Look, we know that more TV content is being viewed on more mobile devices. So activating this alongside TV will obviously generate much better performance outcomes for your brands. BVOD is being accessed, more at more increasing rates than ever before. So to really get in front of your users with brands, we're finding it to be a super attentive format right now. And then lastly, we need to be able to have that seamless integration between those offline formats and digital TV. And we find now, given the data sources that we have, this is probably closer than ever. And obviously we have the platforms and the tools to do the same. And guys, I think that was it.
Guys, are there any questions for the team? Sometimes they're pretty quiet. If not, send them to me and I can connect you to the guys. Before everyone goes, that was a short and sharp session, so thank you. Everyone can go back and start to sandbag their house. Before everyone goes, I've got a couple of announcements to get everyone through. Firstly, this week on the 7th, we've got NAIDOC Week, our webinar, which we want everyone to join. I've got this recorded. It'll be available later on today on the YouTube channel. So we'll send that out and also house a deck on our on the Education Hub, which I hope everyone's hanging on the Education Hub. So on the 7th of this week, which I think is Thursday, we've got NAIDOC Week. It's a special story from Jake from Indigenous TV. He's going to tell us his story. He does our welcome to countries whenever we've got our those events on. Then we've also got, it's probably more a leadership series, we've got a communications law update. So Stephen von Munster is giving us a legal update about what's happening with law and make sure we don't all end up in jail. Next webinar, we've got GWI coming in about the future of research. Then after that, we're launching a 3-part series over 3 weeks called The Art of Growth. It's going to be done partly with LinkedIn, who's going to talk about organic growth. Then we've got Rochelle Burberry, who does a wonderful job in the IMAA's PR. She's going to be talking about the importance of profile in the industry. And then finally, we've got Accelerate, a leads generation company, talking about how to generate leads for your business. So it's a 3-part series. And then on the 20th, we're in Brisbane for all our Brisbane agencies. We look forward to having a beer with you guys up there. Janet Bowie's just arrived just in time. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. Have a great week. Stay safe. Amobee, thank you so much, guys. You're great partners, the IMAA. Lenten, Trish, Andrew, stay safe, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your time.
We'll talk to everyone soon. Thanks again, guys.